In the news tonight, His Majesty opens the Princess Haya Military Hospital that will serve about 500,000 people in Ajloon and Jarash governorates. Iraqi's Prime Minister says the offensive to seize back Mosul from Daesh is going faster than planned. And Russia announces it will stop bombing eastern Aleppo for 11 hours a day for 4 days. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. His Majesty the King, the Supreme Commander of the Jordan Armed Forces, opened the Princess Haya Military Hospital in the Governorate of Ajloon. The hospital will provide health service to about 500,000 people in the Ajloon and Jarash governorates. King Abdullah was accompanied by Her Royal Highness Princess Haya bint al-Hussein, wife of Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, UAE Vice President and Prime Minister and ruler of Dubai. The King toured various sections of the hospital, which was fully equipped with modern medical facilities and will be run by qualified and trained medical, technical and administrative staff. The 9-story, 150-bed medical facility was established with financing by the Saudi Fund for Development. Built on a 43-dönüm plot of land, the medical facility offers services in all the main medical specializations available at the Royal Medical Services, such as kidney, dialysis, physiotherapy and X-ray departments, in addition to 11 operation theaters. The fighting around the Iraqi city of Mosul has forced around 6,000 people to flee their homes in the last 3 days. The International Organization for Migration said most of those displaced had fled in the last 24 hours. Iraqi and Kurdish forces launched a new military operation to clear villages on the city's outskirts. More in this report.
Iraqi and Kurdish forces press on with their offensive, launching yet another wave of attacks on their way to Mosul. Kurdish Peshmerga fighters advanced north and set a Daesh vehicle up in flames northeast of the city. In a video conference to world leaders in Paris, Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi said he's pleased with the pace.
The fighting forces are currently pushing forward towards the town more quickly than we'd thought, and more quickly certainly than we had established in our plan of campaign.
The French Foreign Minister said checks would be carried out on crowds fleeing Mosul to ensure militants did not escape hidden among civilians. French President François Hollande earlier said it was vital that the assault on Mosul did not simply lead to Daesh militants holding up in other areas, notably Raqqa over the Syrian border. US President Barack Obama said he was confident Iraqi forces would defeat the militant group.
Mosul will be a difficult fight, and there will be advances and there will be setbacks, but I am confident that just as ISIL has been defeated in communities across Iraq, ISIL will be defeated in Mosul as well, and that will be another step towards their ultimate destruction.
As the Iraqi army and Kurdish Peshmerga operation to retake Mosul intensified, civilians were arriving at the UNHCR's Dibagha refugee camp. The camp, located 40 kilometers south of the Kurdish capital of Erbil, is already home to more than 30,000. The camp manager said his team was operating beyond their capacity. The International Committee of the Red Cross appealed to all sides involved in the battle for Mosul to spare civilians and allow the wounded to be safely evacuated.
The military operation has started in Mosul, and I'm quite sure that the civilians, the people, the children are very worried, and they might try to flee and being caught in fighting in crossfire. We call on all the parties to respect, to protect them, to help them to access to safe areas.
The United Nations said the battle would require the world's biggest and most complex humanitarian effort, which could leave up to 1 million people homeless and see civilians used as human shields. Hala Dababne for the News at 10.
Foreign ministers from several Western and Middle Eastern countries met in Paris to discuss how to restore peace and stability to Mosul after it has been liberated from Daesh terror group. French President François Hollande opened the talks aimed to come up with a plan to protect civilians, distribute aid and address questions about governing areas newly liberated from Daesh. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign and Expatriate Affairs Nasser Jude took part in the meeting along with representatives from 20 countries and international aid organizations. Jude said in remarks during the meeting that Jordan fully supports the Iraqi government in its offensive to liberate Mosul and eliminate the terrorist group from Iraq and the region. He also stressed the need to protect civilians and ensure the delivery of humanitarian aid to them. The Syrian military said a unilateral ceasefire backed by Russia had come into force to allow people to leave eastern Aleppo. The rebels rejected the move, saying they are preparing a counter-offensive to break the blockade.
We believe we now have all of the green lights that we need, both from the Russians and the government and from the armed opposition groups inside. And we hope that the first medical evacuations can take place tomorrow, and they will be organized by United Nations, World Health Organization, with Red Cross, Red Crescent partners and help from non-governmental organizations.
In Aleppo, the Syrian army airdropped leaflets in east of the city calling rebels to leave. State media earlier said the army had opened exit corridors in 2 designated areas in the Bustan al-Qasr Quetta and near the Castello Road in northern Aleppo city. Waiting buses were shown on state television. Intensified Russian and Syrian bombing of besieged rebel-held parts of Aleppo in the past weeks has hit hospitals, bakeries and water pumping stations and killed hundreds of civilians. The 250,000 civilians trapped inside the rebel-held parts of Aleppo have so far stayed away from the corridors. A Saudi-led military coalition said missiles fired from Yemeni injured civilians in southern Saudi Arabia, straining a ceasefire. The coalition said rockets were fired by the Iran-aligned Houthi group at Jazan and Najran in Saudi Arabia. The Houthis said they had launched attacks on Saudi military bases across the border over the past 2 days and that a coalition airstrike killed 3 civilians in northern Sada province. Saudi Arabia and its Gulf Arab allies have been fighting in the war in Yemen since March 2015 to restore the internationally backed government of President Rabbi Mansour Hadi against the Houthi group. The 72-hour truce brokered by the UN began last night, raising hopes of an end to the conflict. Sana'a yesterday passed its first night in 3 months without airstrikes, and the truce was generally holding across the country. Lebanon's former Prime Minister Saad al-Hariri said he would back Hezbollah ally Michel Aoun to become president. His statement was a step that may help resolve the country's political deadlock, but which still faces considerable opposition. Describing Aoun as the only option left, Hariri said the decision comes from the need to protect Lebanon and the people, but is a decision that depends on agreement. Lebanon has endured a protracted political crisis since Parliament failed to elect a new president more than 2 years ago. That paralyzed government caused a breakdown in many basic services and revived fears of a slide back towards civil war. However, Aoun will still face big obstacles towards his election as president by the country's parliament, including opposition from Parliamentary Speaker Nabih Berri. US Republican candidate Donald Trump would not commit to accepting the outcome of the November 8th US presidential election if he loses. His disclosure at the final debate with his Democratic rival Hillary Clinton sent shockwaves across the political spectrum. Trump's refusal, which Clinton called horrifying, was the standout remark on the debate and backed claims he has made for weeks that the election was rigged against him. Trump's statement may appeal to his anti-establishment followers, but is unlikely to reverse opinion polls that show him losing, including key states that will decide the election. Here's more on the reactions.
Voters watching the third and final presidential debate on TV in New York City seem to fall largely into the Clinton camp.
I'm going for Hillary Clinton, and I think the other people, they're not that dumb to elect a guy like Donald Trump.
I thought Hillary Clinton was absolutely phenomenal. I thought that Trump was his natural, nasty self as usual.
Some, however, said Donald Trump had performed better in this debate than in the previous two.
Trump did his best this debate for the first time, which is great. That he got good coaching.
People watching the action at this bar in Pikeville, Kentucky, had differing views on the candidates and the campaign.
Donald's probably not as refined as Hillary is. I mean, because she's been in politics for so long. But the thing that I love about him, I think he speaks from the heart.
I hate this election. I think it's terrible. I probably will not vote for. I'll probably vote for like a third-party candidate.
It's like two dogs fighting. I mean, just going in before it what was going to happen.
What America's voters really think of the rival candidates will show at the polls on November the 8th.
Tesla's Motors bids to be the first among many rivals to get autonomous vehicles on the road. Chief Executive Elon Musk said all new Tesla Motors models will come with hardware to enable them to be fully self-driving. The Silicon Valley electric car company said its Model S and Model X electric cars are already being produced with the new hardware, which includes 8 cameras, 12 updated sensors, and radar with faster processing. The new hardware package will cost $8,000, Musk told reporters on a conference call. He said the software to enable fully autonomous operation is still being tested. Musk said he expects that by the end of 2017, a Tesla would be able to drive in full autonomous mode from Los Angeles to New York without the need for a single touch on the wheel. FC Barcelona striker Luis Suarez collected his second European Golden Shoe Award after becoming the leading footballer in Europe's top domestic leagues last season. The Barcelona forward scored 40 goals in 35 La Liga starts, helping Barca retain the Spanish title. He ended the 2015 and 16 campaign with 59 goals in 52 appearances for Barca in all competitions. This time around, the 29-year-old wanted to celebrate the prize and share it with his Barca teammates. Ronaldo, who scored 48 goals in all competitions last term, holds the record for 4 Golden Shoe Award as Europe's top footballer, while Messi holds 3. World number 6 tennis player Rafael Nadal officially opened his international tennis academy in his hometown of Monaco. Rafael Nadal Academy will be a high-performance center in which talented youngsters from all over the world will be able to practice their sports as well as study. Nadal was joined at the ceremony by old rival Roger Federer, who praised Nadal's persistence despite difficult times with injuries. Nadal is also not in the best form of his career after he was kicked out last week from the Shanghai Masters by Serb Viktor Troicki in an upset-filled second round.
Teamwork is working together.
And finally, the weather outlook: relatively cold across the hilly areas tonight and pleasant in most areas with northwesterly light winds. Tomorrow, fair conditions continue in most parts of the kingdom, while it will be relatively hot in the Jordan Valley and the Dead Sea. Temperature in Amman will reach a high of 28 degrees. And the Gulf of Aqaba should also expect a relatively hot day Friday, while winds will be northerly and somewhat choppy seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. To close here, our top stories once again. His Majesty opens the Princess Haya military hospital that will serve about 500,000 people in Ajloun and Jerash governorates. Iraq's Prime Minister says the offensive to seize back Mosul from Daesh is going faster than planned. And Russia announces it will stop bombing eastern Aleppo for 11 hours a day for 4 days. And with that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Lawal Balkar. Have a lovely weekend.